Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inta and welcome back to the channel, and it's been a while, so I decided it's time to update my Smite 2 tier list. I think last time I made one of these was like quite a few patches ago. They've been releasing a ton of gods recently, so basically there's like about 10 new gods pretty much since I last did one of these. And the game in general has changed a lot. There's been a ton of balance changes, reworks to items, all that kind of stuff. And with the playoffs approaching for the Founders Series, it's going to be very interesting. Likely a lot of this stuff will change, you know, as we see the playoffs. There's going to be a ton of stuff probably pulled out there that the pro players have been cooking up that we don't know about. So potentially we'll have to remake this one after that. We'll see what goes on and how different things will actually be compared to how the meta looks now. But yeah, as always, this is a combination of my own experiences in ranked as well as what we see in pro play and the general like community sentiment towards these gods and stuff like that. So first up, let's jump in with Amaterasu, who I think I will throw to the S tier. Amaterasu is definitely one of the premier solo laners in Smite 2 right now. She has received a few nerfs, especially to the int scaling on her 2 and her 1 and stuff like that, but she still does an absolutely absurd amount of damage for how tanky and like hard to kill she is. You can build a little bit of damage in the build. You can go stuff like Gem of Focus, you can go Pendulum for your starter, you can go for Bracer and stuff like that. You can get quite a bit of damage in your build and still be very hard to kill as armor. Not only from just general tankiness and the mitigation from her mirror, but also she's very high mobility. She's got the sustain from her 1, she's got the long duration CC immunity and stun from her ultimate. She's just incredibly hard to lock down, incredibly hard to get off of your backline, even with a little bit of damage in her build. And with a little bit of damage in the build, she does an absolute crap ton of burst damage to the backline. She also has a pretty incredible laning phase, which is interesting. In Smite 1, generally, Armor is known as this more sort of like late game god, where her laning phase will suffer a little bit. But I think due to the changes with like int scaling on her mirror, being able to build Pendulum and stuff like that, she actually has a surprisingly good laning phase. You just need a couple of points in your mirror and you can start like full clearing the wave, and you can actually get a lot of pressure in the lane as well with Amaterasu. And that's a pretty deadly concoction when you have someone that does well-ish, like reasonably well in lane, and then absolutely dominates team fights the way Armor does. She's absolutely one of the top solo laners right now, but not quite an S+ tier god in my opinion. Next up, we have Anher, who I think I'll throw to the C tier. There's not much reason to pick Anher in the ADC role, in my opinion. I will say this now before we get any further in the tier list. I do think at the moment Smite 2 is relatively balanced on the low end. I think a lot of gods are playable, and there's very few even in these lower tiers that are like completely unplayable. You will be hampering yourself if you go a pick like Anher, for example, over a more powerful pick like Jingwei or whatever. But honestly, at the moment in Smite 2, there are some clear outliers at the top end, but there aren't too many clear outliers at the bottom end. I do think a lot of stuff is playable. In fact, pretty much everything is playable, but you will be hampering yourself a little bit if you go for some of these lower tier picks like Anher. ADC builds are strong right now, and you can just build the standard ADC build on Anher and you can absolutely do work. He does plenty, but there just isn't really much of a reason to pick Anher over a lot of better ADCs that are available. Anubis, I think we'll throw to the A tier. Anubis has been doing very well in Smite 2 since he got his sort of like mini passive rework, and they changed magical lifesteal a little bit, or like int-based lifesteal items. He's been doing pretty well in solo. He's been doing okay in mid as well. And yeah, this god is just like way safer in Smite 2 than he is in Smite 1. Like the amount of protections he gets from his passive is insane. Magical lifesteal has been buffed up a lot. Or int-based lifesteal, I should say. If I ever say magical or physical, I usually mean strength or int in this tier. It's just for future reference. I'm still used to Smite 1 terms. In solo, Anubis' laning phase is incredible. He absolutely dominates most picks in solo just due to the sheer amount of wave clear that he has. He just insta-clears the wave, and then you can't really trade against him. You often take collateral damage from his 3 and 1 while he's clearing the wave. He has really good totem pressure. He gets a lot of the side gold camps. He gets very fed out of the laning phase. And if you can translate that into Anubis' incredibly dominant mid-game, just start one-shotting people, use your ultimate for objective control, he can be incredibly powerful. The only reason Anubis isn't higher up is because he does suffer a little bit in the late game, especially if you're playing him from solo lane. You're going to lack the frontline presence of something like an Amaterasu. And so there are definitely downsides to picking Anubis, but if you can play him right, if you can dominate the laning phase, translate that lead onto your team in the mid game, get a lot of objectives, he can absolutely be an incredibly powerful pick in Smite 2 and is worthy of an A tier placement. Next up, we have Ares, who I think will be our first B tier pick for the list. Ares does have a lot going for him. He's very good into a lot of the meta picks. He's super good into Fenrir, as we all know. He's pretty good into Susano as well. Any gods where that cripple is going to be super valuable, Ares is going to be really good. He does a lot of damage, as always. His conversion on the passive is arguably stronger even than it was in Smite 1. You don't have to build aura items, but you can still get a lot of free strength and int from that passive. Similar to Smite 1, he's super good with auto-attack heavy teams. We don't really have too many auto-attack junglers yet. Maybe Nemesis, I suppose. But if you're running like a double Hunter comp, you're running like, you know, an Izanami mid and then like a Jingwei and ADC or something like that, Ares does get a little bit better with his 2's buff. And his ultimate with the lesser amount of beads in the game, it's kind of an interesting case with Ares because you'd think his ultimate would be insanely strong in Smite 2 because a lot of people are forgoing beads, you know, to grab like Aegis or to grab Shell or something like that. There's much less people with a straight up beads relic. But for one, his ultimate did get nerfed in that if you break the chains, they're completely broken and you're never going to get pulled by that or anything. They did delay the pull quite a bit, and also every single support in the game is buying the beads relic. So if your support is really paying attention, they can really just shut down the enemy Ares as long as you stay with your support as a backliner. They can just press their team-wide AoE beads and completely negate an Ares ultimate. And yes, that is on a longer cooldown than Ares ultimate. You can still make plays and stuff, but that does kind of bring him down the tier list a little bit. Honestly, I think if the beads active item for supports didn't exist or was never bought, Ares might go up to the A tier, but I think with that, he probably belongs in B. Athena is next up, who I think will also go to the B tier. Athena is fine. She does a lot of fundamentally good support things. She has the global rotation, although it is a little bit hampered by the fact that teleporters are so prevalent in Smite 2. You know, not only did we get the base teleporters added recently, but we of course have the 4 side-to-side teleporters that make Athena's ultimate a little bit less valuable because a lot of gods can kind of do similar things that she can do. But of course, Athena ultimate is still very valuable. You know, if your teleport side to side is on cooldown, you can use Athena ultimate, and obviously you can get straight to a fight, straight on someone, give them that damage shield, do a lot of damage. It's still much more valuable than the teleporters, obviously, but it is limited a little bit by the fact that every god can teleport. And of course, her taunt is as deadly as ever, with beads not being a thing. But again, if you're trying to like dash in and taunt the backline, you might just get beads by the enemy support, and it completely cleanses it on everyone, and it can kind of shut that down. But Athena, the nice thing about her is that her main CC is on a much lower cooldown than Ares, obviously. And yeah, Athena's basically fine. Athena's fine. Athena's playable, but there are definitely some better supports, which is why she's in the B tier. Bacchus, I think I will throw to the A tier. You could argue Bacchus is debatably a B tier god at this point. He did get nerfed substantially, and he has definitely fallen off in like pick rate and win rate in the Pro League. And in my games, I've been seeing a lot less of him as well. He still sees playing solo, sees a tiny bit of playing support, but more so as a solo laner, I would say. And he's still fine. He still has really good CC. He has the displacement on his 2 that is not affected by DR, which is really nice. His ultimate, again, not affected by DR. And he does a crap load of damage. Bacchus really absolutely chunks people. And a lot of the reasons why Bacchus was one of the best gods in the game a few patches ago are still true. It's just a lot of new things have come in, especially relative to solo laners. There's been a lot of really good solo laners added, and it just makes Bacchus not anywhere near as valuable as something like an Amaterasu or a Sobeck that we'll talk about later. And that combined with some pretty substantial nerfs. I would say Bacchus has received probably the most nerfs in the entirety of Smite 2's history at this point. He got nerfed pretty heavily, and I think that's definitely taken him off of his top spot. I think you could even argue that Bacchus is a B tier god now, but I think he probably is slightly better than Ares and Athena, so I'll put him in the A tier. Baron Samedi. So this is an interesting one. I think I'm going to throw Baron to S, but there is definitely an argument that Baron is an S plus god as well. Baron is definitely one of the best gods in the game at the moment, even after all the nerfs. His ultimate's Vortex strength did get nerfed very recently, but it's still incredibly powerful. It's still a massive giant AoE teamfight CC that can disrupt people and then stun one person. Beads are less common, obviously, and a lot of the time you can't even be countered by support beads. They can get their entire team out of the pull and stuff like that. But oftentimes beads doesn't even last long enough and someone still gets pulled, and then if you're getting pulled all the way away from your support, they sometimes aren't in range to beat a stun and stuff like that. There's a lot less jumps and dashes in the game as well at the moment compared to what you would have in like Smite 1, for example. So Baron's 3-2-1 combo like pretty much always connects if he hits the 3, unless they're going to like beat it or whatever. Obviously gods with dashes can get out, but there are a lot of popular gods without dashes at the moment. He's super tanky if you want to play him in the support role or the solo lane role. He does a ton of damage from mid as well. He's very versatile, which is super nice. His cooldowns are incredibly low. You know, CDR is obviously really strong in Smite 2 in general, but Baron, even with a little bit of CDR, his 1 goes down to like a 5-second cooldown, his 2 goes out like 6 seconds. It's kind of insane. And his 2's heal is as strong as ever. Well, not as strong as ever, obviously. It did get nerfed. But it's still ridiculously good. You know, if you're super low on health, his 2 could heal you for like 500, 600 health. It's absolutely insane. And yeah, there is definitely an argument for Baron still being an S plus god in my opinion. But with the nerfs, I think he's probably just at the top of S tier. Okay, I've just realized we're 12 minutes in on the recording and I've done like 7 gods. So we are going to speed up a little bit for the rest of this tier list. So Bellona, I think I will also throw to the C tier alongside Anhur. Similar to Anhur, I think Bellona is kind of fine. You can definitely play Bellona and get away with it. There just isn't much reason to pick Bellona over a lot of the more popular and better solo laners. Kurdanos, I think I'll throw to the A tier. He's definitely seen a bit of a rise since the changes that made him sort of a little bit more strength focused. They took away some of his int scaling and gave him a lot more in the strength department, and just building a full strength like standard like kin size or crit ADC build is really popular on him right now. And he's definitely one of the better ADCs, I would say. Well deserving of A tier. Chak, I think I'll throw to the C tier. Again, similar to Bologna, Chak is playable. Chak is absolutely fine. You can definitely do work with him. You can even play the jungle if you want to, or even Chak mid. But especially from solo lane, there's just so much better picks than you could go. A lot of really good solo laners have been released recently, and there's just no reason to play Chak when you could play something better, really. But he is definitely fine. If you want to play him, you can absolutely get away with it. Fenrir, I think I'll throw to the S tier. Fenrir is super good right now. Plays both support and jungle incredibly well. They did give him the nerf recently where the insta-bite is gone, and that was definitely a large part of why Fenrir was so strong. You know, if your support is having to react with beads, it's a lot more difficult when Fenrir just insta-bites you and he's pulled you like a decent way away before your support can even react in beads for you. And just in general, the fact that people are going beads less makes Fenrir better. The gods in the game currently can't really stop brutalized super easily. A lot of gods have no mobility or just a dash and like no instant access CC to get Fenrir off of them with the brutalized. But yeah, I think as more gods get added to the game with like long duration CC immunity ultimates and stuff like that, and more gods have jumps and teleports that can easily break brutalize or on-demand stuns and stuff like that, Fenrir probably will fall down a little bit. But for the moment, he's definitely still one of the best junglers in the game and one of the best supports in the game as well. Hades, I think we'll throw to B tier. He's slightly better than Bologna and Chak in my opinion. You can definitely do work. He does still have a really strong laning phase, and his team fight is definitely better in Smite 2 than it was in Smite 1. But again, ultimately, there's a lot better solo laners that you could be picking over Hades. I don't really see any reason to pick him unless you have a specific strategy in mind or if you just really enjoy playing him. Hecate, I think we'll go to the S tier. Not very popular in lower level play, especially in like my ranked games. I'm not up super high in the ranks yet. I've not been grinding too much in this preseason. But pro play and high level players really showcase what this god is capable of, and she can absolutely do work. Her two absolutely chunks. Her one is on a very low cooldown. Her ultimate is the main selling point of her, really. It can absolutely just blow up team fights, completely disrupt everything. It's one of those ultimates that's just really team fight winning. Like if you hit this on multiple people and they don't have beads ready, or like the support doesn't have beads active ready, you're pretty much just screwed. Like Hecate can win a team fight on her own with this ultimate. It's really incredible. And yeah, she can be one of the harder gods in the game to play, but if you can get a grasp on her, she is absolutely an incredible mid laner. Jingwei, I think we'll throw to A tier alongside Cerdanos. I think Jingwei and Cerdanos are relatively evenly matched at the moment. I think Jingwei is a little better, but Cerdanos with a similar build can absolutely do work as well. Jing has fallen off a little bit since her release, but she's still an incredible ADC. She uses the builds really well. She's super good with crit. Her 2 just being able to have like 9 charges of that is completely insane. She's even safer than she was with her ultimate having the option to cast a second airstrike and stuff like that. Jingwei is still a great fundamental ADC. Definitely one of the best available. Kukulkan might be our first D tier, you know. I kind of want to throw him to C because there absolutely are arguments that Kukulkan can do some work. You know, if you hit those big fatty ultimates, he does a lot of damage. But I think I am going to throw him to the D tier just because he's still relatively unsafe in Smite 2. He does a good amount of damage, but there's a lot of mid laners in the game that can do very similar amounts of damage to Kukulkan, but much easier to hit and much safer. And again, I've said this throughout the tier list, but a lot of gods are playable in Smite 2 right now, and I do think Kukulkan is playable. Just because he's in the D tier doesn't mean if you're going to pick him, you're going to lose instantly. I think he still can absolutely do work. It's just there isn't much of a reason to pick Cuckoo over a lot of the really good mid laners that are in the game right now. Loki, I think we'll throw to A tier. He has fallen off a little bit, but I think he's still among the best junglers in the game. The proc build is still insane on him. He still just does absolute work with the Vanish reset cooldown in late game team fights. You can just poke people down with the 2 down to like half health or whatever. Just keep 2ing them. Just be super annoying, and then eventually you can all in. You can even use Vanish to get in there now if you think you can secure a kill, because you can just Vanish straight back out or Vanish onto another person and just absolutely run through team fights with this god. He's super good in lower level play, but even in higher level play, he can absolutely do work. Especially if it's an uncoordinated lobby without any voice chat or anything like that. Mordred, I think I will also throw to the A tier. I'm big hype on Mordred at the moment. I think he's really good, both from solo lane and from jungle. I do prefer him from solo personally, but a lot of people say he's really good in jungle as well. And Mordred is really like a mid-game machine, I would say. His early game is kind of okay, but his damage isn't amazing. And his late game, he can get caught out. His ultimate can be juked relatively easily. His damage is fairly slow to get out, and he can get nuked, especially if you're building like a full damage build from jungle. Personally, that's why I prefer him from solo lane. He gets a little bit more time to kind of get his stuff out and get use out of like his items and stuff like that. But in the mid-game, Mordred is very, very hard to contest. He just does so much damage. He's got a ranged poke. He's just incredible in the mid-game. And if you can translate that lead, you know, get a little bit ahead earlier and then translate that into mid-game, just completely blow people out of the lobby, just snowball on people, Mordred can be incredibly powerful. Neith, I think I will also throw to the A tier. Neith is still really good. The double stacking build is still as good as ever. She has received some nerfs over like the last few patches and stuff, but I would say Neith, Jingwei, and Cerdanos are about on par. Obviously, Neith does very different things to Jingwei and Cerdanos. She is fully ability-based and can absolutely play mid as well. Mid is definitely just on par par with Neith's ADC. I think you can play her in either of those roles and you'll do really well. But I think in general strength terms, she's probably about on par with Jingwei and Cerdanos. The ability nuke build is just incredibly strong. Her ultimate can absolutely chunk away like 40% of someone's health, and then you can just initiate onto them. Her 1-2 combo, like with the 2 spawning weaves, is really good. The fact that she can backflip over terrain walls is really good for her as well. Neith is just still really good, basically. Nuwa, I think I'll throw to the B tier. I'm not really hype on Nuwa, to be honest. A lot of people are saying she's like super good and really hard to deal with. I don't really see the hype personally. Is she annoying to play against? Yes, absolutely, as she always has been in Smite 1. The ultimate is super annoying to deal with a lot of proc items in the build. It can absolutely chunk you down. The vision is really nice. And again, I'll stress it once more in this tier list. Just because Nuwa is in B tier does not mean she's anywhere close to unplayable. Nuwa is still good. You can still absolutely do work with her. But I think there are definitely better mid laners that you could try, and she doesn't really play any other roles super effectively either. Odin, I think I will throw to the A tier tentatively. You could argue Odin has fallen to B at this point. There are definitely a lot of better solo laners than Odin to be playing, I think. But he was the best solo laner in the game for a long time until we got a lot of the newer ones like Armor, Hercules, and Sobeck. And I do think Odin is still really strong in the solo lane. He has received a lot of nerfs over the patches. He's nowhere near like his release strength or anything like that, but his cooldowns are still incredibly low. He still has very versatile builds. He's still absolutely unkillable if he gets a lead. And his ultimate, while has been nerfed a little bit by the gods that have been introduced, it's still incredible into the current roster of Smite 2. As we talked about with Fenrir, you know, with there not being many jumps and teleports in the game, Odin's ultimate really benefits from that. And he's still an excellent all-round pick. You know, he does okay in the laning phase, he does really well in the mid game, he does well in the late game as well. Odin's just like, if you want a solo laner that's just fundamentally good at all stages of the game and is very easy to play, just pick Odin. Soul, I think I will throw to the B tier. Soul has fallen off a lot over like the last few patches. She used to be like arguably the best ADC in the game, like pretty much contesting Jingwei. But I would argue that with the nerfs that she's gotten and with the build shifts and stuff like that, Soul just really isn't cutting it anymore compared to something like Jingwei, Cerdanos, or Neith. I do think she's only slightly below these two. She will probably be like the top of B tier in my opinion. She's absolutely still playable. She absolutely still does a lot of damage. The crits with her passive ring true. But I think putting her in the same tier as stuff like Jingwei, Neith, and Cerdanos will be disingenuous at this point. I do think she's ever so slightly worse than like these three. Susanoo is another difficult one. I do want to put him in the A tier, but I don't think he's quite as good as Loki. But he can still absolutely hard carry games. Susanoo's been a favorite of mine at the moment in Smite 2, just for like hard carrying ranked games. He does an absolute ton of damage. His early game can be a little bit rough. His clear isn't amazing, but once you get to that mid to late game, Susanoo just can absolutely delete people with impunity and just get out of the fight for free with his extra dash. While I don't think he's quite as good as Loki, I think he's close enough that putting them in the same tier is valuable. So I think Susanoo probably belongs in the A tier. He's definitely one of the better junglers in the game, in my opinion, at the moment. Thanatos, however, is definitely not one of the better junglers in the game. I think we'll throw him to the C tier. Again, Thanatos is playable. You can do work with him, especially with Khepri being added to the game. His execute definitely did get a little more valuable. It's just, why would you pick Thanatos over something like Loki or Susanoo or Mordred? There's just no reason, really. Or Fenrir, obviously. They did buff up the damage of Death Scythe a little bit recently, but it does still feel like in Smite 2, it just doesn't really hit the same way it does in Smite 1. Even when you have a lead, it feels like it isn't really doing the same amount of burst damage that it used to. And yeah, there's just not much reason to pick Thanatos over the better junglers that are available, pretty much. That's the reason he's in C tier. Morrigan, I think I'll throw to B. Morrigan is fine. I don't really have too much to say on Morrigan, honestly. She still does a lot of the same things that she did in Smite 1, but there are definitely a lot of better mid laners to pick, and she doesn't really play any other roles super effectively. Yamoja, I think I'll throw to the A tier. Yamoja has definitely been seeing a lot of play in the Pro League, a lot of bans, well, a decent amount of bans, like a small amount, and also a decent amount of picks as well. And she's been winning a lot when she has been picked. And the reason I'm talking about pro play more so for Yamoja is that I never see her in my ranked games, really. I've seen her a couple of times and she's done well. She obviously has like the trolley sunbeam bow builds and stuff like that, but generally I'm just talking about Yamoja's like fundamental support gameplay here. CDR is very available, which helps her out a lot. I mean, she has access to more Omi in the late game. And yeah, Yamoja still does Yamoja things. She still fundamentally breaks the game with the amount of cooldowns that she can cast in such a short period of time. Her ultimate, similar to Odin, is getting a little bit more benefit now because there's less gods in the game that could easily jump over the walls. And yeah, much like Hecate, Yamoja is incredibly difficult to play, but if you do have a good Yamoja, she's definitely one of the best supports in the game at the moment, and I would recommend playing her. Ymir, I think I'll throw to the B tier. Ymir is still very popular. I still see him a lot. We still see him a lot in pro play as well, but I do think he's being a little overrated at the moment. That's my personal take. Again, with his wall, like Yamoja and Odin, it definitely does get a bit more benefit at the moment with the current god roster of Smite 2. And his freeze can still absolutely be deadly, but I do think he's being overrated a little bit. Yes, the blink ultimates can be really good. He's got good damage, good objective secure and stuff like that, but I do think he's probably only on the level of Ares and Athena, in my opinion. I don't think he's on the level of Yamoja or Bacchus. Well, from the support role, maybe he's on the level of Bacchus, but Bacchus also plays solo lane. I think that is generally his better role, and Bacchus is mostly in the A tier because of his solo lane prevalence. But yeah, Ymir is definitely not on the level of Umoja, in my opinion, and nowhere near the level of Baron or Fenrir in the support role. I do think Ymir is being overrated a little bit, but he is still really good. He's still a good fundamental support, and you can absolutely get away with playing him. He'll still do work for you. Next up is Zeus, who will be our first S+ tier. Zeus is just the best god in the game right now. His damage is completely ridiculous. And yes, he is a little bit unsafe. If you can get on him with a coordinated effort, you can absolutely take him down. But the thing is, if you're in uncoordinated games, he just completely, absolutely dominates. And even in the Pro League, Zeus is being banned a lot. And when he's being picked, he's doing really well. The issue is, like, yes, he's unsafe and you can get on him. But the fact that, like, you have to be a tank to be able to survive more than 2 seconds of getting on him. Like, junglers can't really deal with Zeus very easily because he just drops his ultimate and his 2 on himself and you're dead before you can even get your damage out as a jungler. You know, the stun being back on detonate is really powerful. The fact that it doesn't remove charges and you can keep pummeling them with extra damage auto attacks afterwards. Like, Zeus's damage is just completely off the charts. He does, like, the most damage in the entire game, and he can often just self-heal himself by just throwing damage on himself, and it's really hard to get on him and actually shut him down. You really need, like, a coordinated effort of, like, your solo laner and support diving on him first, burning his cooldowns, and if they can survive, which honestly is a question at that point, Zeus just does that much damage. But if they can survive, then maybe your jungler or your mid can, like, follow up on that dive once you've burned, like, maybe his relic and his ultimate or something like that. But it really, if you have to think about Zeus in that way, he's clearly just a broken god. Like, the fact that you have to commit so much to him just to shut him down, this god's just broken. He's definitely the best god in the game right now. Ra, though, is definitely not a major the best god in the game. Ra, I honestly want to throw to C tier. I feel like Ra's not really doing anything right now, but I think to be generous, I'll throw him to the B tier. There is the cheesy, like, auto-attack Phoenix Shield solo lane build that you can go with him, which is pretty good. You can also just go for a standard, like, mid burst damage build. He can do a decent amount of damage. He still does Ra things. If you get hit by, like, his 1 into his ult, it's still going to absolutely chunk your health bar. But it does feel like it doesn't do quite as much, especially the 1, compared to how much he would be doing in Smite 1. And there are definitely a lot of better mid laners than Ra, and if you're going to be doing the solo lane cheese build, you kind of lack a little bit of frontline presence in the late game, similar to if you're playing Anubis in solo. Yes, he has a lot of pressure, but you are lacking that frontline if you do go for that route. And yeah, in terms of being a mid laner, there are definitely better things that you could be playing than Ra, in my opinion. Sobeck will be our next S+ god, though. Sobeck is definitely one of the best gods in the game. I don't think he's anywhere close to Zeus, in my opinion, personally. But Zeus is just so far and away above the rest of the roster that even though Sobeck is significantly worse than Zeus, he's still significantly better than the gods that I have in S tier, in my opinion. Even with the nerfs where his 3 only gets cooldown reduction from gods and stuff like that, his laning phase is just absolutely incredible, which is a little bit ridiculous considering Sobeck's teamfight has always been really good. He now has an execute, which makes his teamfight even better. But yeah, he has a similar issue to Armor, but like on steroids. Like, Sobeck's laning phase used to be like, the best you can do is stalemate the lane, whereas in Smite 2, the best you can do is completely dominate and blow out the lane, which is kind of insane. Like, it's very easy to just dominate the lane on Sobeck, and then you can translate that lead into his incredible mid-game, just rotate on people, start executing, and his teamfight is as good as it's always been. So yeah, there's pretty much no downside to playing Sobeck anymore. It used to be that in the laning phase, you would either lose lane to a lot of matchups, or you would go even in a lot of matchups. You would never really win lane as Sobeck in Smite 1. Whereas nowadays, you will very rarely lose lane as Sobeck in Smite 2. He's just that powerful. And yeah, definitely the best solo laner. Not quite the best god in the game, though, because Zeus exists. Khepri, I'm not really sure where to put, to be honest. I don't really have too much experience playing into Khepri. I want to say he's a B tier. I don't think he's, like, super strong at the moment. But I have seen a lot of people saying he is pretty good, so maybe if I'm being generous, I'll throw Khepri to the A tier for now. The execute is obviously very unique and very valuable, only countered by Thanatos and Sobeck at the moment. So obviously, if you're picking Khepri into a Sobeck, it's going to be a lot worse. Yes, he's very good defensively. If you have a pick like a Zeus or whatever that you just really want to pocket with Khepri, just throw your 2 on him, throw your ultimate on him, make sure you keep him alive. He can be a really powerful support. I definitely don't think he deserves anything higher than an A tier placement from me. Izanami, I think we'll go to S tier. I have limited experience against this god, but from what I've seen, she is absolutely incredible at the moment and probably the best ADC in the game. Discounting Zeus, obviously. If Zeus wants to play in the ADC role, he probably is the best ADC in the game. He's just broken. But in terms of general, like, ADCs that you would see more often, I think Izanami is the best in the game. Her damage is just nuts, honestly. Like, even if you're not building into any of the int stuff that gives you extra dot damage, you still get a lot more value than you were getting in Smite 1, even with just a standard, like, strength, kins, or crit build. And of course, Izanami Izanami's laning phase is as good as it's always been. She just gets the free wave clear from the auto attacks. You can save your cooldowns for poking down enemies and stuff like that. She's still incredible in the laning phase, and she has a really good team fight now as well. Like, the buffs up to the ultimate where it does the decaying slow and take damage over time. Izanami is just really good, man. Izanami's damage is off the charts. Her laning phase is really good. She's relatively safe with the extra movement speed that she gets on her 3 now. And yeah, I would say outside of Zeus playing the ADC role occasionally, Izanami is probably the best ADC in the game. Hercules, I think I'll throw to the A tier as well. Hercules is fine right now. He did get some substantial nerfs. I don't think he's anywhere near the level of like Baron or Armor or Sobeck in the solo lane anymore. But they did revert some of the nerfs that he got on his 1 and 2 fairly recently. They went from 12 seconds to 14, they're now at 13, so he is a little bit better in that regard. But I do think people overreacted a little bit to Hercules' release. I don't think he was quite as strong as people were making out. And yeah, I still think he's absolutely a great solo laner, but I think he's probably just more so on the level of like, you know, Odin, Mordred, Bacchus, that kind of stuff. He's not on the level of Armor or Baron or Sobeck. Danzaburo, I think, goes straight to the D tier. Danzaburo, in my opinion, is probably the worst god in the game right now. There's just no real reason to pick Danza. Yes, you can go funny int builds, you can get a lot of clones, you can even kind of split push and do objectives with that and stuff. He's very cheesy, but I don't think there's any reason to pick Danzaburo right now when you can pick any of these other better ADCs. And finally, we have one of our newer gods. We have Nemesis, where I'm not really sure where to place Nemesis at the moment. Similar to Ra and Khepri, we don't have quite enough experience right now for me to give like a 100% confident placement on Nemesis. We haven't seen her in the Pro League, and I've only seen her a little bit in my games. But I think B tier is probably where I would throw her just based on my initial impressions for Nemesis. I don't think she's a top jungler, honestly. But I think she's fine. I think she can still do work. We'll see where she lands like over time, you know, maybe if she gets some buffs or whatever, because I do think she could probably use a couple of buffs. I don't think she's super good right now. But, you know, as we've seen with stuff like Hercules and Zeus from both ends of the spectrum, a lot of these Smite 2 gods that release, it can take a while for people to adjust to how strong or weak they truly are. You know, Hercules, he got nerfed not honestly that much and fell off completely, and Zeus got buffed honestly not that much and completely rocketed to the best god in the game when people were saying he was the worst god in the game a few patches ago. So yeah, we'll see where Nemesis lands. She might be better or worse than I'm thinking at the moment. But yeah, there you go. That is your full Smite 2 tier list for patch CA6. Things will probably change substantially with like CA7's launch, and especially going into January, going into the Vegas land and stuff like that. I'll definitely update my tier list at that point. But yeah, Zeus, unquestionably the best god in the game. Danza, unquestionably the worst god in the game, in my opinion. And then you've got stuff like Sobeck, Armor, Baron, Fenrir, Izanami as like the next sort of like top pick ban gods. And then down here, you've got stuff like Cuckoo, Thanatos, Chak, Bellona, and her, where, like, I think they're fine, but there's no real reason to pick them over better stuff that's available. What do you think? Let me know down below. Do you agree with my picks? Do you think Zeus is the best god in the game? Do you think Danza is the worst god in the game? Would you have moved some stuff around? Let me know down below if there's anything you think would majorly change from my tier list if you're going to make it yourself. And I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.